So for more on all of this, we want to bring in Paul Keenan. He's a former section chief of the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit and a retired special agent in charge. He's also the CEO of Factor Consulting. It's really good to have you here because, like Lana said, no matter what answers we get, why is never going to be sufficiently answered. But, we have to sort of look at the roots of this. Police describe the shooting as targeted. In your experience, and this is a broad question because, we don't know anything about the shooter, but in your experiences, what factors could potentially drive a deliberate act like this? There are reports that this individual went to the school, but it would have been a long time ago because, it's an elementary school.
Well, thank you for having me, Anne Marie. Appreciate that. Well, typically in these types of targeted attacks, the shooter will have a grievance in the past. And that grievance can be against an individual, it can be against an institution. But this person doesn't have the correct coping mechanisms to deal with that grievance. And they feel that violence is their only answer to deal with that grievance. Many of these people just are brittle people, and they cannot handle any slight or any bullying or any rejections or teasing, and they find that violence is the only answer.
Yeah, I do believe one of the officers in Nashville mentioned something along those lines. So listen, ideally what you want to do is prevent this sort of thing. But it seems far more complicated and more challenging to prevent it. Is the FBI equipped with what it needs to prevent situations like this from happening?
I think the FBI is equipped, but I think it's a whole of society issue. The FBI by itself cannot stop mass shootings. We need bystanders. We need citizens who are observing these behaviors to be able to speak up to law enforcement or to some other authority and tell them what's happening with this person. And then we need the person in authority to be able to react to that. So we need bystanders, we need law enforcement, we need legislators, we need mental health professionals. We need everybody on the same page. And it really needs to be a whole of government and a whole of society effort to stem the tide of these mass shootings.
Yeah, I think you're right. You were part of the response to the Parkland shooting. So you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the shooter in the Parkland shooting situation, the FBI may have been alerted to something sort of odd that was online or something along those lines. So at least a portion of the system worked, but obviously not enough to stop what happened. What can you tell us about your experience with Parkland and your observations from the days surrounding that shooting?
Sure. So Parkland, obviously, I was the assistant special agent in charge in Miami, and I was in charge of the crisis management, SWAT, and evidence response teams. So, initially it was very chaotic, as all these are when you have many agencies responding. After the shooter was apprehended, as a side note, about 200 yards from my house where I was living.
Wow.
After he was apprehended, things began to calm down, and we went about our jobs professionally. It was extremely difficult emotionally to have to tell parents about their kids. That was the hardest part, obviously, trying to identify the kids who were killed and the other victims that were killed. Extremely emotional. But you do go about your job professionally and you get it done. I think about it quite often, especially on days like yesterday when other schools happen or school shootings happen. But it's something that first responders have to deal with, and they live with it for the rest of their lives as well.
So let me ask you about that. I want to go back to whether or not the FBI is equipped, because now I sort of found the information I was looking for, that about 6 weeks before Nicholas Cruz walked into that high school, the FBI received a tip about his desire to kill, about his gun ownership. And then it was unclear what happened after that. We know the shooter in this case, it looks like, had a manifesto explaining a detailed plan. I guess what I'm trying to find out is whether or not things have improved. If someone was to contact the FBI, and we don't know, would enough have happened to prevent a shooting like this? Are the systems better than they were when Nicholas Cruz walked into a high school?
So I can speak to the FBI on this. You are correct. The FBI did receive a tip into a call center, and that tip was never passed to the Miami field office.
Mm.
So after that happened, the FBI owned it. We made a mistake, a bad mistake, and we completely overhauled the call center. It's now the National Threat Operations Center. There has been a massive amount of training. The behavioral analysis unit has gone down to give training on things to recognize when callers call in, and now we have strict parameters on how to notify the field offices in a certain amount of time. And those field offices are mandated to notify local and state police as well. So things have changed. You can never tell if that would have made a difference in this case.
Yeah.
But I believe in 81% of the cases out there in mass shootings, at least one person knows about it before it happens.
Mm.
So that's why I'm saying bystanders, people who hear this stuff, they have to take it seriously. A lot of times it's a very close relative or friend or coworker who hears this because they're the ones in position to hear it.
Yeah.
But they're also the closest to the person. They don't want to get them in trouble, or maybe they don't believe that they're actually going to go through with it. But I think you have to get over that hump and notify somebody that you're hearing these behaviors or seeing these behaviors.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Paul Keenan, thank you.
Welcome.